Good morning. This is Michael Leahy of the Irish Freedom Party. Many people have expressed surprise recently at the results of our general election, noting that a country which was traditionally conservative has now elected as its largest party a Marxist organisation whose policies are extreme even by European standards. I'd like to examine how this has happened. Ireland is unusual in that historically there has been no traditional right-left divide and has been characterised by two catch-all parties, which are both considered to be slightly conservative. They now describe themselves as centrist parties. The more conservative of these parties was the Fine Gael party. However, this party is best characterised by a phrase which it popularised in the 1980s, that it was, quote, right-wing on financial issues, but left-wing on what it called social issues. I don't believe in the long term it is possible for that dichotomy to exist, because left-wing social policies will inevitably require socialist fiscal policies. Fine Gael has waged a relentless campaign against the nuclear family for over 40 years, and it has done everything possible to de-Christianise Ireland to the point of continually denigrating Christianity while facilitating, for example, immigration from Islamic countries. Its single greatest programme of its last period in office is the Ireland 2040 programme, which seeks to import up to 2 million people into the country by that date. Remember, the present population of the Republic of Ireland is somewhat over 5 million. The only source of immigration is, of course, going to be the Islamic world. Many people now fear that the native Irish population will become a minority in Ireland, probably no later than 2050. The promotion of gay marriage, the delegitimising of the nuclear family as a social unit, and the early sexualisation of children, particularly in areas of pornography and gender identity, are also issues on which Fine Gael has expended huge resources and time. It was the party which first funded and normalised single parenthood at taxpayers' expense, as well as the one which introduced no-fault divorce and no-reason abortion. Now, if you think these policies are more reminiscent of a Marxist party whose main aim is the revolutionary deconstruction of society, then you would of course be correct. But oddly enough, Fine Gael still portrays itself as a slightly conservative party, claiming to be a supporter of business. In reality, Fine Gael supports multinational cartels and has little interest in the small businessman or farmer. With a conservative party like this, is it any wonder that we are now on the cusp of seeing Sinn Féin, a revolutionary Marxist party, which our police force still believes to have ties to paramilitary organisations, being on the point of taking over government? I have to ask Fine Gael voters, what did you think was going to happen when you spent the greatest part of your political capital destroying the nuclear family, attacking the Catholic Church, and putting housing and frequently marriage completely outside of the reach of young couples? How can you now possibly express surprise that when you break up the things that make life meaningful and worthwhile, when you set out to ensure that the great majority of people have no stake in a stable society, that people will turn to an extremist party like Sinn Féin to protect their interests? This is now precisely what has happened, and I, for one, deeply fear the consequences. In regard to the other centrist party, Fianna Fáil, traditionally more to the left on financial issues and frequently describing themselves as socialist, they are in fact the ultimate pragmatists. It is very hard to identify a core principle which they have not abandoned. They used to be pro-life, but that was quickly jettisoned once there was a whiff of a change in the national mood. They used to be strong on the national question, but their complete surrender to the European Union at the time of the banking collapse was the ultimate betrayal of Ireland's nationhood and sovereignty. Like any party which believes in absolutely nothing, it has found itself being led by those who do. Whatever you may say about Sinn Féin, they do have a programme, even if they're slow to be honest about it, and it is ultimately a very dark and sinister one. Sinn Féin's programme is the destruction of Ireland's culture and nationhood, the implementation of globalisation and the placing of our people under Marxist control. This will be done with the full support of the European Union and of the banking cartels which control that union. Every socialist or Marxist party eventually comes under the control of the banking system, and this is one of the reasons why big businesses are always so left-wing. I'm afraid the days are long gone when the left stood for working people. The reason why we're now on the cusp of one of the most destructive left-wing governments in Europe is because of the failure of the two centrist parties to have a coherent set of policies which combine social and fiscal conservatism. Neither of them seems to have fully understood the significance of the recent election, and Fine Gael in particular seems intent on waiting until the people come to their senses. It's much too late for that, particularly when the two centrist parties offer nothing coherent to the people. And without these parties being able to meet the legitimate needs of the people, it will be impossible to stop the ongoing drift to the left, and it would be impossible to stop the hard left from taking power. For Fine Gael to gamble on another election would be to risk cementing the role of Sinn Féin even further. Sinn Féin are a party which has never met a politically correct notion that it didn't like. The fact that the two leaders of the centrist parties have not offered their resignations despite both having led disastrous campaigns does not augur well for their ability to develop a new political vision, which is so badly needed right now. That is why I'm asking you to consider the Irish Freedom Party when you next come to vote, which may not be too long into the future. We have a coherent vision of the future based on supporting the family, supporting the nation, developing a responsible banking system, supporting free enterprise and protecting your freedoms and rights from the attacks of political correctness. In this short video, I can't outline all of our policies. That's for another day. But I would like to ask moderate voters to carefully look at where voting for the centrist parties has gotten you. You really need to start looking at viable alternatives, or our leftward drift is only going to get worse, with disastrous consequences for all of us and for the nation that we all love so much. This has been Michael Leahy of the Irish Freedom Party. Thank you for listening.